The 85th Texas Legislative Session gets gavelled in today. In the last few sessions, we've had the pleasure of speaking with the folks over at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. We'll do that throughout the session again this year. And joining us on the phones to talk about just the priorities and some of the outlook for the 85th Texas Legislative Session is Dr. Kevin Roberts, the Executive Vice President of the Texas Public Policy Foundation. And Dr. Roberts, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Thanks a lot, Chad. I'm doing well. It's a nice, sunny, and windy day in Austin, probably appropriate for the start of all the hot air that we'll hear in the Capitol.
Yeah, probably so. But want to start off, for folks who don't know much about the Texas Public Policy Foundation, and I expect most of our listeners actually do because we've had many guests on from the Policy Foundation over the last few years. But give kind of a rundown, a behind the scenes of what exactly the Texas Public Policy Foundation does.
Sure, great question. I think a lot of people hear the word think tank and they think that all we do is sit around in the corner and drum up these high-minded papers. And in fact, what we're doing is trying to find those opportunities in legislation, in policy, in broad, sweeping ideas that allow us to actually make changes for free market and conservative reform. So we like to say that we're not merely a think tank, but a do tank. We've been around 27 years. We were founded in 1989 on the issues of school choice and tort reform. We got one of those done during the Governor Perry administration. That's tort reform. We're still working on school choice, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But we have, and this surprises a lot of people, although we are the largest state-based conservative think tank in the country with 65 employees, increasingly, especially since the outcome of the national election, we are being asked to get involved in federal policies. And I think that speaks to not just our effectiveness as an organization, but far more importantly, to Texans, the way we go about our lives and wanting limited government, maximum liberty, free enterprise. That's a message that the rest of the country needs to hear. We are privileged to be able to speak about that on behalf of all Texans.
Well, I know that you will have an event that begins tomorrow, and it does last the next couple of days, and people can watch online on your website. What all can people expect when they go to your website and listen to the event coming up starting tomorrow, right?
That's right. Thanks for asking that question. The event is called Policy Orientation. We're a very front door kind of place, so we want to be plain in what we call things. Policy Orientation is a gathering of nearly 1,000 people from around Texas and beyond. The purpose of it is to give attendees, and an attendee can be anyone in the state, and some insight into what our legislative priorities are for the coming session, to give them some in-depth knowledge about a range of policy areas. So this lasts for 2.5 days, as you said, starts tomorrow, runs through Friday. Listeners to your show can go to our website, texaspolicy.com, and see all of the sessions for free. Our objective is to disseminate good ideas about conservative and free market principles and policies to anyone who's interested in hearing them.
Let's talk about the budget, because that was announced yesterday that lawmakers are going to have less money this year to, I say, play around with, mess around with. And I know that is something that you guys at the Texas Public Policy Foundation focus a lot on, is a conservative budget. How do the numbers that were released yesterday impact the upcoming legislative session?
Well, great question. That's been in the news around the state, as you know, and of course our great policy analysts and economists who track that particular part of government were not surprised to hear the comptroller speak about having less revenue. We are, of course, we want the oil and gas business to be doing well, and that's had an impact on that declining revenue. But I do have to tell you from a philosophical standpoint that while we love the service of our elected officials, we think that government is better when it has less to spend. And so we are not crying over here at the Texas Public Policy Foundation because the state government has less to spend. We believe that even in our conservative state of Texas, that the government could be a better steward of its limited resources. So as you know, and your listeners, because you've had us on your show over the years, one of our greatest successes at the foundation has been the promotion of what we call the conservative Texas budget. This was passed last year, or last session. We limited the growth in spending by the Texas state government to the population growth rate plus inflation. We are sticking to that again this year. We are cautiously optimistic that will happen again, in part because of the revenue projections as they were analyzed or announced yesterday by the comptroller. Nonetheless, as you know, Chad, with all of these seeming priorities for legislators and the political pressure that's applied on them, it takes someone to be there at the Capitol explaining the benefits of keeping government small, and that's the role that we will play during the legislative session.
Besides the budget, what are some of the key issues that y'all will be focusing on in this session?
You know, one of the things we're proud of, Chad, is that we're not just, as Bill Buckley would say, standing athwart history and yelling stop. We really pride ourselves in being for things, so it's very important for us to talk about, on the one hand, limiting the size of government. It's equally important for us, on the other hand, to be talking about promoting liberty, whether that's liberty in ending unnecessary regulation of small businesses, unnecessary licensing of certain industries, for example, allowing nurse practitioners and certified assistants greater liberty in their professions. We're very well known, as you know, for wanting to expand liberty in the world of education. So we are the primary advocate for education savings accounts, sort of a health savings account-like vehicle by which you and I as parents would be able to use a debit card or a similar account to pay for things like private school tuition and other educational services. You also know that we're a national leader, and it's sort of tough to believe, this conservative think tank in Austin. We're a national leader in criminal justice reform. Our work has generated reforms in 38 states. We've gotten out of the business of building prisons unnecessarily and really focusing on rehabilitating those people who, in fact, can be rehabilitated. That's just a quick snapshot of what we see going on in the legislature. As you know, there will be 5,000 bills passed, and we have to keep an eye on all of them to make sure that there aren't too many shenanigans that go on.
When it comes to criminal justice reform, something that I've noticed, and I'm sure y'all have noticed as well, is that people get mixed up on what criminal justice reform actually is. It's not release everybody from prisons and get everybody out. It's a different way of thinking about things, and something that Governor Perry championed. I know quite a bit, and it is something that has been talked about a little bit on the national level. I think it's been talked about a lot more here in this state. Where are we as far as criminal justice reform and getting the right information out to the citizens about it?
Boy, that's an excellent question. Like Governor Perry and many of my friends, I know I have undergone over the last several years a real change in heart in thinking about what criminal justice should be. I mean, I'm as much a law and order conservative as the next guy. But what doesn't work, and we've unfortunately proved this in Texas for decades, is building prison after prison after prison. That's both costly, it probably reeks of crony capitalism as well for these private prison companies. But most importantly, is that we're really undermining the dignity of the human person. We're not here wanting to excuse crimes that people commit. But what we are wanting to do is say there is a certain segment of the prison population who are first offenders, nonviolent, and good conservative social scientists tell us that they have a 70 to 90% chance of being rehabilitated if you take just a fraction of the resources that would be spent on building prisons and spend it on that rehabilitation. And so that's what we've done over the last several years. We've really proven over 11-year history of our Right on Crime effort that conservatives and free market people have the answer to criminal justice reform. Here in Texas, to get to the second part of your question, what's coming up for us in this session is expanding some of those reforms into juvenile justice. And that's sort of the fifth phase of this long game, this long plan that we've had in criminal justice reform. In other words, if we can make sure that we don't over-criminalize young people, I'm not talking about people who are violent offenders and unfortunately, statistically, have little chance of being rehabilitated. But if we can sort of capture those people in a good sense of that word early in their lives and give them an opportunity that being in a prison would not, we are, as Governor Perry has been, very optimistic about their ability to come into society as not just as employees, not just as small business owners, but more importantly as neighbors, as friends, as colleagues in church.
Visiting with Dr. Kevin Roberts, the Executive Vice President of the Texas Public Policy Foundation. I know you have a busy day today and even busier tomorrow, so we'll let you go. We look forward to having the folks at Texas Public Policy Foundation on throughout the session, and we wish you the best of luck.
Thanks so much for having us. We're happy to be on anytime. Have a great day.
All right, you too. That's Dr. Kevin Roberts, the Executive Vice President, Texas Public Policy Foundation. Again, we've, last session we had them on quite a bit. Anticipate doing the same in this legislative session.